Welcome everybody to today's office hours. It's been a couple weeks. Hang on a second. We have. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Greg. It's been a couple weeks, and I've been out of the office due to some family medical things that we had to deal with. But man, it's good to be back. So I appreciate you guys showing up, and we're going to go through this. 2 weeks ago, whenever we did the last office hours, we talked about turning your time into workflows, and we went through the process of taking what you do as an agent and making it into workflows. And actually, I got several questions about the build process. So because of that, I wanted to go ahead and dive deeper into that. So we're going to go into that today and go through that process. So for those that don't know me, quick introduction, Mark Stepp. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve. Been in the real estate technology business for 33 years now, and a lot of systems and automation and helping you guys create a sustainable business. And even, whenever things like the mortgage rates, the interest rates stuff goes up, inventory's high or inventory's low, there's things that you can do to be more sustainable. And that's really what we want to make sure that you guys know and are able to do. Today's agenda, I'm going to do a very quick recap of the last office hours that we did. Now it is recorded. You can go back to it, but it is important for you to know some of that, some of the ideas and thought that we were going to go through in it, and then we're going to concentrate on the build process. Before, it was really more of the design, but I got several questions on the build, so I want to go through and make sure that we deal with those. For those that are new, you can always go to realvolve.com/office hours, our website, and you can get all of our replays. And there is an option to look at all the different past replays. It's on YouTube as well. This is just a link to the YouTube videos. So definitely go visit that, especially if you didn't get the last office hours. This is going to be important for you to kind of understand. Actually, it's not. Understanding at least the process. Because we're going to talk about the build process portion of the entire design, build, run, repeat framework that I've taught for several years. We'll talk about some help and some premium services things as well. So, as a recap, we talked about really defining what you do, going through and finding what is that baseline process that you guys always do. There's an outline format that you can go in there and do some logging, but identifying really the core strategy elements, and the core strategy is something that I've taught as well, the conversions, operations, retention, experience strategies that are important in your business. Everybody has them, everybody uses them, they just don't always identify them that way, and I've really focused in on that. And then subgrouping those, we really won't cover that. The conversions, operations, retention, experience, I've talked about. Your leads, your processes for money making processes. The retention part is your referral and return customer pieces, and the experience is really just the making of the memories, helping them have an experience through everything that you do. So anything I do really talks about the core pieces. We talked about defining what you do and that whole process of deciding what you can do only as far as in your process. What are those things that only you can do, should do, whatever, And then everything else should be something that you delegate if you've got a team. If you don't have a team, it's really important to think about, who would I delegate this to in the event that I had a team? What role would play do this process in order to get that task done? And we're going to kind of cover that a little bit today as well. Really defining your vision. What is your world-class service? What differentiates you amongst all the other agents in your area? Because unfortunately, a lot of agents will go in and say, well, I will sell houses to anybody that's got a pulse and is breathing. And while that's true, it's not always the easiest thing to do to bring in new people necessarily. And we always talk about what differentiates you amongst others, so that people will talk about you, that will make them remember you whenever they need to do it again, go through that process again of buying a home or selling a home. Or if they know people, if you've given them a world-class service, those other people that they know, your past buyers and sellers know, they will tell other people about your world-class service. And filling in the gaps, the great and possible service that your workflow can provide. What are those extra things that you can do? So we talked about all that different stuff. We talked about building the gaps and defining what you do. So definitely go through that other last office hours and go through that process, because there's a deep understanding of what you need to do to get to the point of what we're talking about today. But basically, defining what you do, creating some sticky notes if you have to. And this is just a way of thinking about it. All the different timeline things that you do for any particular process. And you would want to break this up between the different processes, whether it's your lead generation process. What is it that I want to do up to the time they sign that listing agreement or buyer's agreement? What are the things that I do between marketing and actually getting it onto MLS, getting it prepared for MLS, and then from that in MLS all the way to contract to close? Those are all different milestone segments that you can create separate workflows for. And then whenever that time comes, you can apply that workflow and then know that all the different things that need to get done do get done. And using a sticky note process is one way of doing it. Is it the only way? Absolutely not. But this is definitely a great way to think through your processes. Then we went through, on that previous office hours, we went through the entire design process. But what I really didn't cover very much was, filling in your current processes, filling in the things that need to get done into a spreadsheet to help organize this even more. So we're gonna kind of talk about that. So whenever you go to, and actually let me go there real quick, help.realvolve.com. In help.realvolve.com, there is a section here called Getting Started. Go to Getting Started, and we have two different document types. This workflow worksheet is just a PDF file that you can use to see how to organize and create your workflows. Today, what I'm actually going to do, just because it's a little bit visually easier to deal with, is use the Google Sheets version of this. And what you're going to want to do is, anytime that you want to use this, and again, you would use this for each different section or each different process section of what you do. The conversions would get its own spreadsheet. The listing process would get its own spreadsheet. The closing process, even the you would divide it up between, on your closing process, are you dealing with the seller side or the buyer side? You know, if you're a buyer's agent, there's different things that you're going to do for the closing process than if you're the listing agent side. And then even post-closing, what are the different things that you do after it closes? And then just the normal follow-up and stuff. But we would click on the Google Sheets version. It's going to come up and say, hey, you need to make a copy of this. So what's the copy of this? It's actually the Workflow Master worksheet is what we're copying here. But you'll make a copy. You click on this. Being a little slow, okay, and then it comes up and it's just got a copy. So here, the very first thing that you would do would be go in here and give it the name of whatever process that you are creating. That if you've used the sticky notes that we talked about in the previous office hours, what is that process? And what we're going to do today is go into the contract to close. Let me just do it. Contract to close, and I'm going to say seller side. Okay. Now, some of the first things that you're going to want to do is whenever you first look at this, you know, there's some basic columns of information that are really important whenever you're defining your workflows. The problem is everybody, no matter where you live in the country, out of the country, there are differences in the way contracts are set up, differences in the way requirements, different types of dates, different types of a lot of things. Who are the different party members? Some places are escrow, other places are attorney. So really kind of depends on where you're at and what you're doing. The first thing that you need to do is come down here to the setup tab. And in the setup tab, we've created a basic setup. Now, this is very basic. It just kind of gives you the ideas of what's being used. These setup items are basically menu choices that are used on this side of the spreadsheet. So any of these down arrow type things have little drop downs, and those drop downs come from this setup screen. So the first thing that you really need to do is think about who am I going to assign tasks to? Who am I going to do these different tasks with? Who are the different party members that will be doing these tasks? And we've set up most of them, several of them, but not all of them, because everybody does different. There'd be a lot of wasted space if we put them all in there. And what are the different key dates that are important to you? So these are the different things that we're going to kind of talk about. So you make the copy of the database, and you're going to go in and you're going to change those three sections: the assigned to, the with, and the key dates. And then it's just a matter of going through and taking your sticky notes and putting those sticky notes into that activities tab. Now, go just a little bit deeper into understanding the setup tab, because it is actually important. The changes you're going to want to make in these. First one is, there is a place here that says your name. And obviously, if this is yours, you'd put in your name. A lot of times whenever I'm doing my Realvolve piece, my login information that I have in here, I think this is Joe Agent. Nope. Settings. Yeah, Joe agent. And then any of your team members. So if you are a team, one of the things you want to do is go in here and each of the different names that are in your lists is important to make sure they're in that list. So you would go in and you would say your name, whatever it is. In this case, I'm using Joe agent, Annie assistant, etc. Okay, put all those different users in your account. Now, those are important. What may be more important, depending on how you're set up and what you're going to do, is what roles would play. Now, Annie is an assistant, so definitely you'd want to have an assistant in there. But maybe Annie really is more of a transaction coordinator, making sure that transaction coordinator is in there, making sure that the listing agent is in there. Any party member type that you would use, and whenever we're talking about the party member types, if you're going into a transaction of some sort, in your people tab, you're going to have all these different party members, seller agent 2. And if you have your system set up so that it defaults all of these in that you use, I guess I really should go into that as well. If you go into your drop down, go into settings, and go all the way down here to set default fields. In set default fields, there's a section for properties and a section for transactions. You're going to really want to go in there, if you've not already done this, go into both of these sections and identify what party members you almost always have. Now, it's not that you have to select every one of them, because technically your workflow will add the party members that it needs. But for those that you have almost all the time, you might as well add them. And these are the same ones that you really want to go ahead and make sure are in the assigned to. Okay, so as far as the different roles and stuff that are in there, that actually I shouldn't say that. I'm going to confuse something here. The with field is actually that, but whenever you talk about your roles for your agents, it's typically the same piece, like here, buyer agent, the different people, assistant, those are all the roles that are in there. I'm sure I just confused you, because there really are kind of two different roles of things. You've got your roles of your team members, and that's really what goes here. And then you've got the roles of the party members. Are they the seller? Are they the buyer? And it's kind of the same grouping, but it's important to have your team member roles in here that you use, that's from that same list, and your party member roles that you have almost all the time. Make sure that those are filled in. So while these are very similar as far as kind of what they do, we do have two separate sets of fields for them. So that's why they're on two different lists. So if we come over here and we look at the assign to, who am I going to assign this to? Well, I might assign it to my assistant. I might assign it to my listing agent, whatever. That setup from the assigned to side is really my team members, and that's this assigned to section. For the with field, who am I doing this activity with? Is it with the seller? Am I sending them an email? Am I sending them a text message? Am I calling them? Who is it that I'm calling? The photographer? Whoever I'm doing this with, it's good to have it. Now, I can, in this drop down, I don't have to use this drop down, but what it does is it helps you organize it more. If I want to just type in there, loan officer assistant, I could type it in there, but what's going to happen is you'll see a little red thing saying invalid. And that's just to let you know it's not in the list. If it's something that you use, you want to add it to the list, the little triangle will go away. Okay. But that's just a good way of having all of your roles together for either you're assigned to or you're with, so that you know that you're dealing with them. So definitely something to think about. Any questions on that? I hear a live mic. Nope. Okay. So once you've got the roles set up for the assigned to and the with field in there, the next important thing, really, this may be the most important thing, is to think about your key dates. Now, what is a key date? Now, the first three here really are just things that we have in Realvolve that are important, that you will probably use at some point, but they're not actual date fields like the rest of these. So your listing date, your photography date, your closing date, these are different types of things that you might find in the listing process. But maybe, and really I would probably put this as home inspection. So I think it's actually home inspection date, and you can realign these how you want. But what I would encourage you to do, if you're doing this maybe from a contract, for like the contract to close process in this case, you might go out to your contract and say, okay, what are all the different date fields that I use for a contract? Again, you can go into the set default fields in Realvolve and look at in transactions. Actually, we have them in properties as well. There are the party members, and if you go past the party members, which is what we were using for the roles, we do have the date fields, and these are all the different date fields that are available within Realvolve for the property side. And if we come over here for the transaction, scroll down past the party members, these are all the date fields for the transaction side. Now, if you were to go out there and say, okay, if I look at my contract, my signed contract or whatever, what are the different date fields that would typically be used on that contract? You might have appraisal dates. You might have, in any of these dates, and we've got tons of dates. These are important things. The thing is, not everybody in every location uses these different date fields. Some of them are very specific to certain areas of the country, and you would never use them necessarily. But we put them there because whenever people are creating templates for emails and stuff, and whenever they're creating workflows, they need these. And if they create a workflow package that other users will use that need them, they need to be able to use the same date fields. So we regulate kind of what date fields are in here. We do get requests for new date fields. So if there's a date field that you need that we don't have in here, which is possible, depending on, again, what area you're in, you could send a message to our support team, say, hey, I need this particular field, date field, and then we'll add it in at the next update. Most of them are in there for any particular thing that you're going to do. If there's something that you need and you're not finding it, from this screen, you can do like a Control F and just say, type in some of the word. Here I'm looking for close. You could say closing, whatever. So here's closing date, closing document, delivery deadline date. And there's lots of different types of dates in here. And if you can't find it, might use the Control F or or find in your browser and be able to search for that. It's very simple. And if it's something that you would use on a very typical basis, go ahead and check it. Make sure that it's in there so that whenever you create a new transaction, it automatically adds that date field into that transaction for you, so you don't have to go in there and manually add it. Now, again, if you're using a workflow and that workflow uses a particular date, if it's not being used in this mute, there's the live mic there. If you have dates that aren't checked but are used in your workflow, whenever you start that workflow, it will go ahead and add that date field into that transaction for you automatically, because it knows it needs it. If it knows it needs it at some point, whether you fill it in immediately or not during the workflow, it's very possible that whenever you start the workflow, you don't know the photography date or you don't know something, so you can leave it blank. But if it's used in that workflow, it'll go ahead and add it to that listing or that transaction for you. So that's important. Now, these different date fields that you use, closing date, contract date, clear to close date, any of these that you use that are checked, those are the same ones that I would recommend that you put into this list. If you're using the Google Sheet, it's easiest to do this. Just put in the ones that you use into the list. That way, whenever we're over here and we're saying, okay, we're going to create an activity, we can click on the drop down to pick one of our roles. We can drop down and pick one of the party members, and we can come over here to the key date and we can say, okay, it's dealing with the close date. So that way, it's just you don't have to type and type and type as much. By having them in this setup, places them in the drop-down list. Okay. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. If you're doing any kind of spreadsheet stuff in Google, I mean, this is very common practice. So just want to make sure that you guys are aware of it. There were a couple people asked about it, what was the setup for and how do you use it? So that was kind of how that goes. So once you've got these filled out, it makes it very trivial to take your sticky notes that we talked about in the previous office hours and start defining the items in this list. And again, this is really just to help you organize your thought before you put it into Realvolve, because lots of things can change, can be fluid, and it's very simple just to kind of come in here and say, well, really maybe I want to change this from a certain number of days or whatever. Now, prior to this office hours, I did pretty much that same process, and I created one that is a little bit more filled out so that you can kind of see kind of what this is looking like. Now, some additional notes on what I wanted to tell you. Any of these fields are free form entry, so you can type in whatever you want, multiple lines of information or whatever. Typically, what you're going to do is take that sticky note that we talked about that has information about a particular task that you do within your process, and you give that a name of some sort. What is it that I'm doing? And if I saw it on a calendar, would it make sense? So this is the activity title. Type in whatever you want. There are certain merge fields, and if you go into Realvolve and you go into a workflow, and let me just Let me just go into one of these. Let's see if this is a transaction. Okay, so let me see if I've got any that already have it. No, I do not. Okay, so let me just go into one of these. This second anniversary. Not that it makes any difference here necessarily, but if you saw second anniversary on a activity, would you know what it was about? Probably not very easily. What you can do is in any activity, you can put in the title field, you can put in the bracket, and it'll give you a couple options that are typical. We don't have all the merge fields, only certain ones, but in this case, we have bracket, street address. So I can put in this field here, second anniversary, transaction street address. So whenever this activity gets applied to the calendar, if I'm applying it to 123 South Main Street, the activity would say second anniversary, 123 South Main Street. That way, whenever I look at it in my calendar, I can actually see and understand what that's referring to. So whenever you're in your list here, if you know that it's something that you need to put in there, and you don't necessarily have to put the full merge field like it has in here, but identifying that, I probably want an address or something in here, a person's name or an address that goes along with it. It's good to note that. That way, whenever you're actually building it inside of Realvolve, you don't have to you won't miss it as much. You won't miss it as likely to miss it as you're putting it in. Hoping that made sense. And then, like I said earlier, this is free form entry. So the drop downs, most of the time, if you're doing some kind of activity, it's with a particular person, a particular party member type. But if you know that, there's some activity that you want to do with certain party members, you can just type them in there. Again, it'll say invalid, but the invalid just means it's not in the drop-down list. If you wanted to add that into your drop-down list, you could certainly get rid of the invalid. But because I want to send this email to multiple people, I want to send it to maybe the buyer agent, the seller agent, the title rep, the loan officer, whatever. In this case, the opening to the closing parties, I'm sending this email to multiple people. Who is it that I want to send it to? If I'm typing it in here, it's one thing. Whenever I actually go to put this in the party members field, I'll pick it from the list. So it makes it a lot easier to do it whenever you're in Realvolve. And if I know what those fields are ahead of time, I don't have to think about it too much. Thinking about it ahead of time during the design phase is what's important there. The type field is just what's going to go into the type field here. No big deal there. I'm going to get rid of this one. It was the first one we made. And then the rest of this is the calculation. These four fields deal with the calculation of the schedule. So if we come here and we say schedule, it's going to give us the ability to put in a number, the days, weeks, months, or years, before or after, and then the key date, whatever date field that is. So if you have those, the number of days, before or after, and whatever key date, it makes it really simple just to blast those in there. So if I was to take this, and I'm going to, just for grins, move this off to the side. Actually, what I'm doing here is I'm going to take this title here, and we're just going to go through that process. I'm not going to do the entire thing, but go through that process and show you basically how take this and put it in. So now I click on the little plus. I want to start a new workflow. create a new workflow and click continue. The first thing that we need to know is what's the title of the workflow. I mean, it's going to be over here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to put this in. Now, because I think I probably already have one of these in here, I'm going to say office hours. I'm going to close. In this case, I know that because this is a transactional piece, I need to make sure that I choose that it's a transaction. And then from that, I go in and click on the add button. The rest of the stuff I really don't need. If you want to put in a description, a more verbose description, if you've got an assistant or somebody that might be looking at what does this really mean, you can put that into the description. All the alternate workflow piece is not used very much, but it is there in case this workflow gets stopped prematurely. If for some reason this is going to stop, what workflow would I typically go to if I stop it early? If I've stopped that workflow, it'll then pop up and say, hey, do you want to start this? And if you don't, you can just cancel out. But if you have something in here, one of the other workflows in here, it will then come in there and say, okay, these are some options. Do you want to do that? You can tag it if you want and add some groups. And I don't really want to go into the groups right now. Groups is an extremely important piece of this, but I don't want to confuse anything. So at this point now, it's just a matter of taking each one of these activities and their associated information pieces and starting to fill them in. So I'm just going to grab the title of my first activity here, which is enter dates into Realvolve. We'll say add the activity. And I'm going to go ahead in the title. I'll go ahead and paste in enter dates into Realvolve. And if I look at this, who's going to do it? It's going to be the transaction coordinator. Actually, let me see if I can just do it. I'm going to do this. See if I can. Making these two fit and not overlap would be a challenge, but we'll do that. Okay, so who am I going to assign this to? I know if you guys look at my screen, I've got a screen up here, a screen over here, and a screen over here, and then my laptop. So I've got actually 4 screens that I use all the time. People say, oh my God, I go crazy. The thing is, my wife said that she uses 2 and now she wishes she has 3. The more you can't have enough screens. But what's nice is you're able to do things in a multiple way. And whenever you're trying to fit it all into one, you're not quite used to that. But this is a good place where I can come in here and I can, copy some content, come in here and paste it in, or I can look at it. Okay, assign to, instead of Joe Agent, I want this to be the transaction coordinator. I come over here and choose transaction coordinator. Who am I doing this with? In this case, because entering the dates into Realvolve, there's really no party member or anything that I need to do this with. So the none option is valid. The type in this case is a to-do. And then the schedule piece is what's important here, is 0 days after contract date. So it's just a matter of saying 0 days after, and then choosing the contract date. I'll go through that one separately. There's one where we would want to use the time, and I'll show you that as well. Pretty much anything that's in this field, for notes is going to be kind of arbitrary in somewhat. In this case, because I do want a checklist. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could create a separate column for checklists and just have checklists, just have notes, just have, whatever. We kind of lump them all into one because not all of them are used all the time, and just kind of kept it a little bit cleaner, having one big column. But in this case, it says for enter the dates, enter the important dates of the contract, see the contract. So what I would do in this case is I would come in here into the checklist area, and I would look to see what are the important dates of that contract. Well, if I do bracket, and I could say, well, we want to make sure that the acceptance date was entered. And again, you may not have these dates in your area, or you may have other dates. So whatever your dates that you would use that's based off of your contract, put them in there. Home inspection, contingency dates, or whatever. There's lots of different possible dates that you can put in there, but you're going to put in all the different dates that are pertinent to your system, that whenever you start this workflow and you want to verify that certain dates have been entered, what are they? Choose them, put them in the checklist. Once you've got everything here, click on add. And now we have our first activity in our contract to close seller side in the system. Okay. Then we go to the next one. In this case, I'm going to grab that, come down, add another activity, come through this, and we're doing the exact same thing, transaction. I don't want to bore you with all of these, so I'm not going to go through the entire process. But one of the other things that is kind of important, if you're looking at these and you're doing them in a certain order, and the order matters, we don't really have an order field in here, but if something lands on the same date, in this case, I've got I've got multiple, 4 different tasks that all happen 0 days after the contract date. If there's something that needs to be done before others, put them in order based off of the order field here. So in this case, if I wanted to make sure I added the party members second after the dates, then put in the order field a number 2 there. It basically is the second item of the contract date list, and we go through that process. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the 0 days after contract date. And exact same type of thing with party members. Now, who are the party members that we want to make sure we have in the system? The seller, the home inspector, home inspector, fair. Find all the different party members that are important to you. If you've got those in this list, whenever this activity comes due, you can then verify, did I add them or not? And if I did add them, are they the right people? Did I change somebody? Making sure that they're in there. If they're not in there, you can select them from a drop down. So that makes it real easy to verify that you've added all your party members. Why is that important? Well, it's important because down the road, if you're sending an email, you're making a phone call to the home inspector, if you don't have the home inspector in your party members section, then it will make it a little bit tougher. Not that you don't have them on auto or whatever, but you want to make sure that you've got them in the system, and this just verifies that they're in the system. Once you add, this activity comes due, you add them into the list here. If they weren't in there, then it adds them to the party members section in Realvolve, so you don't have to go through and think about or worry about who's missing or whatever. You've defined your process and you've added all your different party members. making sure they're in there. If they don't matter, whenever you go to complete this activity, if you've got a seller to and there's not a seller to, there's an option to say ignore this name and go on. But at least it's a tickler to make sure that everything gets done. So then we click on add on that. So we've got those first two. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is, which I didn't cover, is whenever after you've created this, look through all of your different notes, and you'll see, like in mine, I've created some where it's like, okay, I know I need a template. I need an email template of some sort. I'll call it seller opening email. I'll put a prefix type thing on it. But these are notations to yourself that you need to create some kind of template. I would encourage you to go through this list and maybe create all your templates ahead of time. Just go through and take time, write them out. You've probably already have some emails that you've sent in the past. Copy those, paste those in, make changes, fill in merge fields, do the due diligence there. If nothing else, if you just want a placeholder for now, you can at least go in there, go into your templates area, and just create a new template, give it a name, give it a quick subject, and then maybe insert body here. Put the words insert body here into your template so that down the road you need to fill it in. Because whenever you're filling in your templates, if you don't have content in here, it becomes a problem. But whenever we're creating these activities, we need to know which template are you going to be using. And if you've created them ahead of time, then you can just pick them. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back after you've created them, go back and add in the template, and it's just extra work. If you do it ahead of time, it's much easier. So go through your list, create all your templates, and then come back and start doing your different workflow pieces. Okay, the one thing that I would really like to help you guys understand as well is the appointment. Okay, so here's one where it looks like any other activity, and it is technically, but it is an appointment, which an appointment basically means I'm going to have a time associated with it. All these other ones, you don't necessarily have times correlated with them, but in this one we do. So I want to make sure we cover it. The other ones are just kind of rinse and repeat type thing. I'm going to click on and add another one, and we're going to come over here to the home inspection. Actually, let me do it this way. I'm just going to create part of that and show you again. Home inspection 4. In this case, because I wanted the address, if you didn't really know the merge field, you might have just typed in, insert address here. Again, in the title, we're going to come in here, put in bracket. It's then going to show you the merge fields that are available. There's limited merge fields, so most of the time you're only dealing with the person's name or the address anyway. But in this case, I want the transaction street address. So you put that in there, and it fills in the rest for you. You don't have to type the entire thing in. Who am I doing? Who's assigned this? In this case, it's going to be the agent. Or technically, I would do this as probably the since I'm the seller. I'm not sure that this would really count, though. I guess it would. The seller agent would be the person doing this. Who's assigned to? If I'm the seller agent's going to go and do part of the inspection, which I'm not sure makes sense in all areas, here in Bolivar, small town Bolivar, a lot of times both agents will come and do some of the inspections. Sometimes it's just the buyer agent, but however you need to do that. The important part of this particular activity that I really want to cover here is on the schedule piece. So here we've said that we wanted to do this 0 days after the home inspection, which is the date of the home inspection. If it's something that is on that date, it's 0 days after. In this case, I'm going to say home inspection date. Now, what makes this one different from many of the other ones that aren't really appointments is that you want to assign a time to it. So the next little drop down here is, is this an all-day activity? Is this where we would add a start and end date? Well, your inspection dates don't always happen at the same time, so that doesn't really make sense. But because we are doing this as part of the home inspection date, we do have a field called home inspection time. So we can go ahead and assign it that. So whatever time is associated in the database then becomes the time of this activity, which is really important because you may not know the time whenever you start the workflow. You may know certain things about it. You may not even know the inspection date, but at some point in there, you should know the inspection date and time. And whenever you fill in the time, that then takes this activity and recalculates all of its known information for that particular date time specified. And that's an important piece within Realvolve's workflows is the automation that's built in. So making sure that you assign the home inspection date and the home inspection time for a home inspection, which is the actual appointment itself. All the other fields, you don't need to worry about that. Time field, any kind of reminders or post meeting or whatever, those times don't really matter. But in this case, it does. It is an appointment. There's really no notes or anything. So now, whenever I have this, there it is. So you would do the similar type of thing for the closing. So the actual closing appointment, exact same thing. There's no difference other than the title. And instead of using home inspection date, you're using the closing date, close date, and close time in that case. Does that make sense? Hope it does. Okay, so once you've got all of these, as far as the spreadsheet, all of these entries in here, it's really just a process of going through and adding them into Realvolve. Once you've got all those in there, then it's time to kind of see, what does this actually do? How does it do it? Make sure that it works through the process. And whenever we talk about, come back over here. You fill in all your processes from the sticky notes, think through that process, think about the templates, and even use ChatGPT if needed. Think about, what would I say? How would I say it? Use my voice for this, create some content for those templates. Do you have the emails that you've previously sent to other people, and fill those in? Make sure that you've got all those. Fill in all your gaps, your great and possible service items, those things that that will help make the process smoother, make the think about the past challenges that you've had, any kind of task that didn't quite go right, or if you're getting phone calls from your customers saying, hey, I need this, that's probably because you didn't think proactively ahead of time and say, hey, they may want this at this point. Let's put that into the workflow. Those are gap items. What are things that I could do and put into my workflow that would prevent past challenges that would prevent phone calls. Not that you don't want them to call you, but you don't want them to call you for routine things that you should have given them information on ahead of time. What are those things that could help you give world-class service, that extra service that is going to make you stand out? And always think about everything that you do from the client's perspective. Remember, you guys go through this day in, day out, week in, week out. You know the processes. They don't leave them guessing. Any kind of thing that they may ask about, put it as part of your workflow. Send it out as an email. Let them know where they're at in the process. This is a big deal for them because it's a big investment, and for them to be left in the dark on things is what you don't want to do. Then it's the process of doing the building, which is what we were just showing, going through and putting that spreadsheet into Realvolve. Whenever you're putting in and starting these spreadsheets of things, all the spreadsheets that you put together. Oh, what did I just do? I hate when my Mac sends it off the screen. That is the one big problem with having multiple screens, is whenever you send it off the screen, sometimes it goes away. Whenever you're creating these processes, in this case, I chose the contract to close. It's the one that's most important to me right now. Choose the one that's most important to you right now. What is it that in your process is causing you the most time delay, or the most thing that is most concerning to you? There's lots of processes, and it's going to take time for all of these to get added into Realvolve. You're not going to get them done overnight, over a weekend. It will take some time. I want everybody to realize that. You are setting up a process that is going to establish your business. And if you're establishing your business overnight, you're probably not getting it all right. It's going to take time. And whenever you're doing these, think about that process, put them in, but put in the ones that's most important first. Add in those gaps as you need to build upon. At that point, once you've got everything entered into Realvolve, then it's the normal design build. The next step is run and then repeat. Run your automations, run them full completely. Use a sample transaction. Go through step by steps. Look and put you as the buyer, the seller, in each of the party members. Send those emails, send those text messages. Go through the process and see what it looks like. Did all the merge fields get filled in? Those are the types of things that's important. Run the process from start to finish. Check for continuity. Are things happening in the right order? Do you need to adjust dates and times? Check for the JIT, the just-in-time content. That email that should be sent just before somebody normally calls you for that information. When is it appropriate to be sent? You don't want to send them something 2 weeks before it's really important for them, because they'll probably lose it or forget about it. Run the process, check your emails, check your text messages, check for spelling, and check all the missing merge fields and stuff. Once you've done that, then it's review. You've gone through the closing. And you're going to do this review and repeat almost every time after you finish a workflow for a while, just to make sure the workflow is working the way you want. Review. Did the workflow perform as intended? Was there something that was missed? Should I have done something different? Whatever. Make sure that that's there. Did you get all the calls or text messages with questions? If you got a phone call, if you got a text message with some kind of question during that process, if that question is relevant to the normal process, make sure you put that in as a JIT, that just-in-time information. Okay, for the last 2 times, I've gotten this email from my buyers asking this particular type of question. Wasn't always phrased exactly the same, but it was all about this, whatever it is. And then go through, create an email, put that into your workflow. So the next time you go through that process, you don't get that phone call, you don't get that text message. Not that, again, not that you don't want those, but you don't want them for common things that you're missing. Review from your client's perspective. Have you, could I have done anything differently or better? And then repeat. Any kind of things that you come up with here, go back into the design phase, put it into your design, put it into Realvolve. Next time you run it, reevaluate. And that's it. Any questions? I know I hit you with a lot. We lost a few people because it went long. Any questions there? Kathleen, Renee? Nope. All right, guys. Hope this was good. If some of this didn't make sense because I kept referencing last office hours, go back to last office hours, rewatch it. A lot of great content on there as far as building out and looking at the time that you're spending right now to build out your workflows. So I hope that helps. Guys, have a great week. If there's anything else I can do for you, let me know. Have a great day.